Thank you for attending so closely with the discussions today. I'd just like to quickly review what we heard because there was so much compelling testimony, and then just provide a couple of observations for the judge's consideration. So first, we heard with regard to the cases that I participated in, a case on the financialization of nature. And we heard from Jutta Kill, who talked about violations of Article 1 of the Rights of Mother Earth, that we are not recognizing that Mother Earth is a unique, indivisible, self-regulated community, that we're part of Mother Earth. And she called on you to develop and recommend a monitoring mechanism so that we can understand the harm caused by the financialization of nature in red, and allow us in step 2 to bring charges against those who are responsible. You heard from an expert, Melissa Moriano from Ecuador, who talked about very specific impacts on forests in Ecuador that were impacted by oil drilling, and showed how REDD is actually continuing fossil fuel extraction rather than reducing it. And the discussion of the violations that she proposed also violated Ecuador's own constitution, which provides additional legal authority with regard to rights of nature. We then heard from Ken Henshaw in Nigeria and the impacts that the forests are feeling there from REDD. He talked about, importantly, how local communities were actually taking care of the forest successfully. And then with REDD, we saw the monetization of the forest. And that is what started to bring attention to the forest as not a relationship-based interaction, but a monetary interaction. And that has started the destruction of the forest. It's made it much more difficult. So really the observation there is relatively straightforward. The financialization of nature allows harmful conduct not only to continue, but to expand. And disturbingly, what is happening with offsets is it's allowing us to feel better about it as consumers. We should not feel better about doing the wrong thing. We should do the right thing. Very straightforward. And ironically, we're also starting to see some of these protected forests burn down from droughts and fires caused by climate change. We're treating the earth as if it's a separate entity that we can play with and manipulate. And whatever damage we continue to cause with greenhouse gas emissions is going to cause problems in protected areas, or ostensibly protected areas. And then second, we heard from the defenders of Mother Earth who presented very compelling testimony with regard to clear, unequivocal violations of the inherent rights of indigenous peoples and the inherent human rights, as well as the inherent rights of Mother Earth. We heard the events at Standing Rock and the Bakken Fields from Dallas Goldtooth and Candy Mossett, who showed in brief that it's who's in control, who is making money, that again, once again, is driving the violations of violence against people and nature. I mean, that we need to start to move away from that type of relationship. It's destructive. It's killing us, it's killing the planet. And looking more at a relationship based where we respect nature, we respect each other, and that we drive our decisions not based on who's making money, but what is best for that relationship. That's where we need to start to move forward. And we also need to recognize that indigenous peoples know their traditional lands, and thankfully their voices are starting to be heard now. We also heard from a representative from the Shore people, Yana Tanagasheva from Russia, who talked eloquently about the destruction of the indigenous ways of life there, the destruction of natural systems from mining, destruction of a sacred mountain, and then finally, including by arson, destruction of the village itself, and the brave work that she and her colleagues are doing to try to prevent the same thing from happening to the other Shore people in Russia. Numerous violations of the rights of Mother Earth happening there as well. And then finally, we heard from the representatives of indigenous Sami people talking about the destruction of environmental and cultural values in the Lula River Valley, where at least 15 hydropower dams have destroyed salmon runs, taking away fish populations, and made many kilometers of the river dry for much of the year. Mining, also going on Sami lands, has destroyed reindeer herding grounds, and again, resulting in cultural genocide, building on top of decades of racial discrimination and violence against the Sami people, and resulting in the suicides, just distressing suicides of young people that's ongoing right now. So they similarly ask, let us decide what happens on our traditional lands. We know our lands, and we respect those relationships. And we hear this over and over again. And so this brings me to a couple of final observations and recommendations for the esteemed judges today. We are seeing many simultaneous violations of the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth, as well as violations of human rights and the rights of indigenous peoples. This is getting worse, I think, before it gets better, and we're going to have to start to revisit how we think about our relationship with Earth again, not as financial and economic, but as what is best for the well-being, from a cultural perspective, from a biological perspective, from a social perspective. And this requires us to start to think differently and learn from some of the people that we heard from today. And to keep in mind, as I mentioned in the opening statement, that rights are just one piece of the puzzle. Our duties, our responsibilities toward each other, and the larger suite of life on Earth, that is what's really driving us. And rights enable us, rights guide us toward the conduct that we are supposed to exercise. And so that is why the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth speaks to rights and duties and rights together. Article 3 in particular talks about our duties, our obligations, and says that each of us is responsible for respecting and living in harmony with Mother Earth. So what can we recommend as we move forward? For example, in the financialization of nature discussion, we heard that we must talk about these things. We must bring people to account. We must recognize the violations. But there's a third step. You know, what happens after that? How do we start to revisit how we live our lives? What do we do? Unfortunately, we heard a great example this morning from the representative from the Sierra Club, who talked about how there are new laws being moved in certain states in the United States, and I'm sure elsewhere, that talks about not offsetting carbon, but cutting carbon. Think about how we change things from moving away from excuses towards actually doing something positive. We want to bring decisions forward that recognize how we bring well-being to nature and all of us who live with it. So let's highlight today the violations of nature's rights and human rights and the rights of indigenous people. But let's also look forward to how we can specifically correct those violations toward a larger goal of flourishing relationships with Earth. And I look forward to hearing more about these discussions and ideas tomorrow. Thank you.
Señor presidente, señoras y señores jueces, el día comenzó con el caso del cambio climático. Comenzamos con tres premisas. La primera era que el problema que estamos teniendo tiene que ver con el sistema en que vivimos. Lo que se está buscando en este mundo actualmente es dinero, acumulación, riqueza. Y lo estamos haciendo por cualquier medio y en cualquier lugar. El fracking en Argentina lo que está buscando es gas y gasolina y petróleo. La energía fósil se está explotando de igual manera en los Estados Unidos. La energía nuclear está produciéndose también en todos lugares, y aquí nos recordaron a Chernobyl y a Fukushima. Por ese lignitio que está ahí, estamos cortando los bosques sin que eso nos importe. Y el agua en Almería, para dar riego a muchos árboles de olivo, estamos secándola. Hay mucha gente que se está beneficiando de esta destrucción y se está beneficiando económicamente a costa de los pueblos, de los peces, de los animales, de los árboles, de los ríos. La segunda premisa era que esto está produciendo mucho daño en el mundo. Y lo que hemos visto aquí, y los casos que me ha tocado a mí interrogar, tienen que ver, son como ejemplos de ese daño. En Argentina, la metáfora que nos han dicho con el fracking es que están estrujando los huesos de la madre tierra. Están secando hasta la última gota de la sangre de la madre tierra, a través del medio más violento. En el caso de la energía fósil, también estamos viendo cómo en Estados Unidos, a pesar de que existe un poco de conciencia ecológica, a las empresas y a las grandes empresas multinacionales no les importa. También se está practicando el fracking ahí y también están produciendo y reproduciendo miles de autos para tener que consumir millones de galones de gasolina y de petróleo. Acá tuvimos dos testigos fundamentales que nos demuestran que esta producción intensiva y violenta de explotación a la naturaleza tiene rostros y tiene gente que lo está sufriendo. La isla de Mauritania es un ejemplo. Aquí hemos escuchado que esa isla, como isla, se está hundiendo. Y en la isla también se están hundiendo las personas que viven en ella. 1.200.000 personas de la isla tienen riesgo de extinguirse y no tienen a dónde emigrar. Oímos aquí a Brian Parras el testimonio de lo que está pasando en Houston y en Texas. El último tornado, nos decía él, nos demuestra que de toda la vida que ha vivido él y desde los últimos 2 años donde vino a testificar la última vez, las cosas se están acelerando. El olor de la tierra, el sonido del viento, la brutalidad de la naturaleza que se enfrenta a los cambios que estamos produciendo. Y todo esto tiene que ver con el cambio climático y con esta moda de vida que estamos desarrollando. Quienes más sufren, sin duda alguna, son la naturaleza y los más pobres de los seres humanos. Y esto nos demuestran los casos que estamos viendo acá. Nos dijeron que ese lignitio de ahí, si es que hay un lugar donde tiene que estar, es en un museo y bajo la tierra. Aquí en Alemania, la sede del cambio climático, se está produciendo una de las más brutales formas de eliminación de los pocos bosques que quedan. Aquí en Alemania estamos sacando uno de los peores mecanismos para producir energía y de los más antiguos, y todo por dinero. Zonas protegidas por la ambición de las compañías se están convirtiendo en zonas de minería. Por suerte, como vimos aquí y como nos contó Eva, Luna y este grupo de jóvenes anarcas, hay esperanza. Ellos se tomaron los árboles para vivir. Ellos se han convertido en una especie de árboles para salvar, por ejemplo, a seres tan indefensos como los murciélagos. Los murciélagos solo pueden vivir en árboles ancestrales y ellos necesitan unos huecos para refugiarse. Tapan los huecos primero, quitan los árboles después. Los murciélagos nos reflejan esa ambición que está teniendo el ser humano por cortar árboles y por seguir dañando a la madre tierra. Esos jóvenes tienen su casa ahí, y no solo su casa, sino que también tienen la esperanza de muchísima gente en este planeta. Hemos sentido esa rabia de esa gente anarca, hemos sentido esa necesidad de buscar otros medios de vida. Ellos no solamente están protegiendo los bosques, sino que están huyendo de la depredación de las ciudades. Están refugiándose y al mismo tiempo están protegiendo. Que el lignito esté bajo tierra, que los bosques se conservan, que la frontera de árboles aumente. Y el último caso que hemos visto es el caso del agua en Almería. Esta zona en donde habitan las tortugas. Esta zona donde el río tiene derecho a fluir y hay partes, como hemos visto en este mapa, que se están cortando. El agua no solo alimenta a los peces, no solo alimenta a las tortugas, sino que también alimenta a los pueblos. Así como Sheila tuvo que emigrar de Barcelona a Almería y de Almería tiene que emigrar a las montañas donde hay agua, eso está pasando con los pueblos de allá. Nos dijeron de un pueblo, Gotcha, que tenía cientos de habitantes y ahora solo tiene 14. Hemos oído a José Llorente, y José Llorente nos habla de la soledad, del desierto, de la miseria que produce este sistema. Al mismo tiempo hemos visto un sistema de monocultivos en donde los olivos, como han dicho acá, ha perdido hasta su forma natural. Esta es una demostración de lo que pasa cuando perdemos el equilibrio. En unos lugares cortamos los árboles, En otros estamos produciendo demasiados árboles para cortarlos y hacer aceite de oliva y producir olivas. Estamos destrozando a la naturaleza. Y eso ha sido lo que hemos visto aquí. Estos ejemplos hemos visto acá. Señores miembros del tribunal, señor juez, nosotros lo que pedimos es que se declare la violación de los derechos de la madre tierra. Todos y cada uno de esos derechos. Hemos desequilibrado el medio ambiente y nos hemos desequilibrado nosotros como especie humana. Pedimos que te tomen las medidas que sean necesarias para llamar la atención a compañías y empresas transnacionales privadas, a los gobiernos locales, a los estados. Sabemos que este tribunal no tiene la capacidad de coacción y que es un tribunal ético. Pero es el único espacio donde pueden venir jóvenes anarcas, donde pueden venir las voces de las tortugas, donde pueden venir las voces de los ríos que se están secando, donde pueden venir los huesos de la madre tierra a reclamar. Es el único lugar donde hay gente que escucha a los humanos más empobrecidos de esta tierra y que escucha a los seres más vulnerables de esta tierra. Por ellos, por ellas, por los pobres de este mundo, por todos esos animales, por esos jóvenes que se trepan en los árboles, por esas personas que migran a lugares donde hay que vivir, por esos que se quedan para cuidar las últimas gotas de los ríos. Por ellos, señores miembros de este tribunal, señor presidente, por ellos reclamamos un pronunciamiento severo y que sea efectivo contra todas las empresas y contra todos estos gobiernos negligentes. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a long day, a very good day, a lot of emotion and learning, and I think it's been really good. So thank you, everyone. Honorable President of the Tribunal and all of our esteemed guests that are here and the audience who are very much a part of making today, I want to express my deepest appreciation for also the witnesses for Mother Earth who have spoken really powerfully in the defense of the web of life and our communities today. In particular, I want to honor the voice of the Indigenous and frontline women that have spoken here, and also their big efforts in getting to Bonn. And the presenters for the climate change case, thank you so much for such a compelling and critical testimony about the dire threats and false solutions. The climate change presenters have made well-founded arguments illustrating the ways in which the rights set forth in the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth have been fundamentally violated by global temperature rise and by a myriad of false solutions being proposed for mitigation. Their arguments have shown the consequences of climate change are leading to irreversible and fatal changes to the very web of life. And because of this and the destructive pressures from capitalism based on endless material growth, an extractive economy, which is devastating, and its devastating trade deals, and a worldview based on domination, patriarchy, and colonization, we can see that there are grave violations of Mother Earth's rights that are not only destroying animals, forests, rivers, oceans, and the atmosphere, but they're also bringing into question the very existence of our human species, with Indigenous and frontline communities already being impacted first and worst by all of these forces. The fossil fuel industry, our governance structures, and corporate institutions must be held accountable for these violations against nature. And as has been stated today, the fact of this accountability is also true, particularly because the fossil fuel industry has known and deliberately ignored and interfered with the public knowledge of the dangers of fossil fuels and their use. So this really adds to the case even more today. While many world leaders hold on to the notion that we can postpone reductions in fossil fuels, nature is clearly demonstrating to us that she is not waiting, and that the Earth's natural laws cannot be manipulated, purchased, and compromised or ignored. Thousands and thousands of people have already lost their lives and been displaced this year in climate disruption events. So we're on a very short timeline here with climate change. The case presenters have shown us that climate disruption is one of the many symptoms of the underlying forces of class-based, hierarchical, capital-dominated economics that subordinate and disempower billions of peoples around the world. From the arguments today and cases in previous tribunals, we can see that false solutions, such as geoengineering, nuclear energy, fracking, carbon markets, and climate-smart agriculture are only furthering violations to Mother Earth's rights. Nuclear power is a distraction, and furthering this dangerous energy system only wastes precious time and delays the transition to a 100% renewable energy future. The catastrophic risks of nuclear energy far outweigh its quote-unquote potential benefits. The disasters in Chernobyl and Fukushima raised our public awareness of nuclear power's how dangerous it is, and that the effects we will experience for a very long time. And is this really the future we want to hand off to our children? Building enough nuclear power stations to make a significant reduction in greenhouse gas emissions would create tens of thousands of tons of lethal, high-level radioactive waste. Clearly, this is a violation against Mother Earth's rights. We need to recognize now that the nuclear age is over and that it is a false energy solution and that the time of renewable energy is here. As the presenters have shown us, also, continuing with fracking only perpetuates the world's destructive dependence on the oil and gas industry. The only ones to benefit are the companies who are drilling at this point. Fracking is destructive to healthy water, land, and air and communities, and fracking is not only a severe violation of Mother Earth rights, but it is no wonder that around the world communities are resisting and fighting back against fracking and calling for sustainable and just renewable energy alternatives for their communities. Shale gas and coal bed methane are not bridging fuels, as gas industry marketing departments try to convince us, and fracking is a dirty fuel with a very high carbon footprint. Fracking is also a false solution and a distraction from what our government should be doing right now, supporting local communities, finding sustainable solutions to their energy needs. Scientists are telling us that 80% of all the fossil fuel reserves now must be kept in the ground if we are in fact going to keep below the 2 degrees guardrail, which we know actually needs to be at 1.5 or less. So burning these fossil fuels is furthering this problem. Likewise, the case presenters have shown us that we must address serious problems created by trade deals. The way that they can be used against ambitious climate policy by giving foreign corporations the right to directly sue governments for new laws or regulations that they claim will negatively affect their bottom line. And that consolidated trade deals in the US and worldwide are so dangerous because they are locking in fossil fuels for years to come, and they distract us again from the deep systemic change that we know we must address. These trade deals lock us into not only climate catastrophe, but greatly interfere with efforts for a truly just and sustainable future. We also must recognize that tied into these deals are market mechanism solutions, which are also a violation of Mother Earth's rights, allowing for escalating destruction through the buying and selling of the rights to pollute through schemes like carbon trading. Well, it's not a surprise that in these schemes, nature is assumed to be a commodity, in that the commodification and financialization of nature is inherent in the capitalistic system. So we have to ask ourselves, when we're really thinking about rights of nature, does it make any sense to try to protect nature and heal our damaged ecosystems by furthering and subjecting nature to an economic and legal system that caused the damage in the first place? I mean, this is not working. This is why we're calling for system change. I have been deeply moved by the tribunal and all the cases that were heard today. Our Mother Earth is calling out to us, and our hearts are breaking. She is letting us know that we are on a path of great devastation. Today, our hearts also break for the fallen sisters and brothers, defenders of the land, whose stories we have heard during the tribunal, and also those we are aware of worldwide. I mean, let's face it, the more, as this progresses and we continue these systems, people are dying and putting their bodies on the line to defend her, and this is only going to increase. And while it is true that the earth will live on and survive even if we do not, it is tragic to think that our mark as a species on this beautiful planet will be one of destruction and violence, instead of beauty-making, dignity, and harmony with nature. The presentations make it clear that our legal and economic frameworks are at war with the sacred web of life. Clearly, we need an entirely different legal configuration that recognizes that the Earth's living systems are not the enslaved property of humans for our exploitation. In order to live in harmony with the Earth and safeguard a healthy world for present and future generations, we need to reform the destructive aspects of our modern life. The climate change testimony highlights the urgent need to address actions that are real solutions based on climate justice and respect for the natural laws of our Mother Earth and frontline communities. I will just briefly name some of the actions that we should be taking, and I'm sure some of you also have many solutions in this room. We need to advance a new society based on social justice and environmental sustainability that recognizes human rights and the rights of nature together. We need to divest from fossil fuels and invest in clean energy. And we need to respect treaties with indigenous peoples and defend their right to continue to inhabit traditional lands, undisturbed by industrial projects and extractive industries, and make sure they have their sovereignty. We need to reject greenhouse gas emission reduction schemes that come from high-risk technologies. We need to address unsustainable consumption and production in the global north. We need to recognize our historical responsibilities of industrial countries. We need to leave 80% of the remaining fossil fuel reserves in the ground. We need to transition to 100% renewable energy sources. Decentralized and democratized ownership of this new energy economy is also important. In this sense, uplifting the rights of nature can address our dysfunctional economic system and support transition to a truly sustainable future. We need to support movements and governance and economic structures that are not based on endless material growth, and instead envision a new way of living that is based on care for the earth and Mother Earth and each other. We are responsible to imagine and create a society with a new understanding of ourselves, progress, and well-being, and that's why we're here at the tribunal, to really imagine what does this actually look like. Sumak Khao Sai, living well, coming from the great wisdom of our indigenous sisters and brothers, offers us an important direction forward to overcome certain concepts that are occurring now of development and well-being. And we don't have time to go into it, but I would really suggest people look at this idea of Sumak Khao Sai, which is so married to the idea of rights of nature from our indigenous relatives. We need to embrace these ideas of Sumak Khao Sai as we think about reparation, mitigation, restoration, and prevention of further damages and harm to each other and Mother Earth. In closing, what is critical about rights of nature is that it can help us reconnect to Mother Earth. I think that's one of the most important things. It gives us a legal way to also move culturally forward with this idea of living in harmony with Mother Earth and connecting. This is essential because underlying so many of the root causes of our destructive relationship with nature is this belief, and it is only a belief by many people, that we are somehow separate from nature. This sense of disconnect from our living earth has proven to not only be spiritually heartbreaking, but a disaster in the human experiment. My hope is that in finding our current legal and economic systems in violation of nature's rights, that we will have a deeply needed societal transformation. Because climate change is an ongoing threat globally, the International Rights of Nature Tribunal will continue to hear the climate change cases as we have in past tribunals and now here in Germany. It's an ongoing crisis for humanity, so we have decided to continue this case. Each time you're finding that the fossil fuel industry and all actors, including governments and corporations that are engaged in false solutions to climate change and dangerous trade deals, all are in violations of rights of nature. So let it be clear that the tribunal is calling for this violation to be visibilized and held accountable. And that the current economic and legal systems that perpetuate treating nature as our slave and commodifies the very system of life to be in violation of the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Nature. And so this is our decision on this case. Thank you very much.
It's really been a long, beautiful day to hear from everyone here, and I will try to make the judgment here as interesting as possible. To begin with, I want to dedicate this judgment to Wally Mene. Some of you may know him. He was a wonderful, dedicated South African environmental justice advocate and really fought against the commodification and financialization of forests, and was a founder of Timberwatch Coalition. And personally, in my engagements with him, he taught me a lot around rejecting red in Africa. And one of his best slogans was, "Tree plantations are not forests." And I really want to emphasize on that and to honor his memory. And it's so sad that he's not here with us, but he lived such a fantastic life, and his work on rejecting the financialization of forests and the commons will definitely continue. I also want to honor the Sengwer people in Kenya, who are one of the last remaining indigenous forests and indigenous people of the world. Many years ago, they taught me how to understand what commodification means to people, to themselves. They taught me how the state and spaces like the UN, pretending that they're progressive, actually criminalize their ways of life and continue to cause ecocide. So to Wally and to the Sengwer, tree plantations are not forests. The last time I was here 2 years ago, I ended the judgment that I had then on the case on criminalization of defenders of Mother Earth with a quote from the African-American Black feminist scholar and activist Audre Lorde. She has a wonderful quote that says, "There's no such thing as a single issue struggle because we do not live single issue lives." And this whole day, this fruitful day that we've had, has really brought me back to that, how connected violations on Mother Earth are across the world, how the conditions for the Sami in Sweden, the lives of those living in Russia, in Nigeria, in Cross River State, at the Standing Rock. All these battles that we are fighting against corporations, against murderous and genocidal states are connected. That we truly are fighting the same battles for revolution and liberation and a life of dignity. Beginning with the presentation by Jutta Kiel, I want to thank first of all Jutta Kiel for laying down the theoretical and ideological underpinnings of the financialization and commodification of nature. I also want to thank Melissa Moriano's work, who was fabulous in enabling us to connect the histories of colonization and neocolonization in Ecuador and across the world, for clearly showing us in her presentation how corporations committing ecocide and states, some which label themselves leftist, socialist, and very progressive states, continue to undermine the rights of indigenous people, the rights of rural communities across the world. And finally, Ken Henshaw from Nigeria, in his presentation, brilliantly gave us a concrete example of how all companies in Nigeria, with the collusion of the state and spaces such as the United Nations continue to perpetuate inequalities 60 years after oil was first discovered in Nigeria. So some of the critical issues under the financialization of nature, under this particular cases. Hold on, just a second. I want to start by reading in the preamble on the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth, affirming that to guarantee human rights, it is necessary to recognize and defend the rights of Mother Earth and all beings, and that there are existing cultures, practices, and laws that do so. Some of the fundamental issues that have come out in the questions around REDD has been the increased land tensions that are being caused under the carbon market schemes. We've also seen the presentations were able to clearly see increased militarization. Of course, also the impact of women and children in these communities. We know that financialization, commodification, and capitalist patriarchy builds and transforms existing gendered inequalities in these communities. We also know clearly from the presentations that we've had that REDD does not halt the climate crisis at all. Instead, it outsources the work of climate justice to communities already on the front lines of the impacts of the climate crisis, and who are already struggling to survive, and whose lives are impacted by the climate crisis. We've also seen how the cultural survival of indigenous communities, their knowledge systems, their ways of living, is being threatened by the financialization of forests. We've also seen that, and I want to problematize the question of free, prior, and informed consent, because in so many quarters we see that there is an assumption that as long as we have free, prior, and informed consent, that communities will obviously say yes to this, to financialization, to commodification, but that's not true. We need to recover principles of free, prior, and informed consent, where communities have a right to say no, irrespective of what kind of so-called benefits that they'll get from this very problematic initiatives. We also see that Melissa Mariano talked about the multiple laws that are being passed across the world to protect, being passed in very specific countries, environmental laws to protect the rights of nature, the rights of people, the rights of frontline communities. But my question to all of us is, what are the limitations of depending on the law, modern laws, and the states, where we know that the states as they are beholden to corporations? In fact, many might argue that the nation state is no longer a complete place of inquiry, because we have capital is moving across nations. We have transnational capital. We have all these corporations that don't just operate in their own countries, but have power spanning multiple countries. Ken Henshaw was very instructive in his presentation that Shell being one company, but they weren't able to sue Shell because, Shell in the Netherlands was saying that that's a subsidiary. We're not responsible for the crimes that they commit. And I think that it's important, as we continue to have our own analysis of capital, of power, of money, it's important for us to see the changing dynamics of these corporations and finance and how it's moving across the world. And of course, again, going back to what's driving the financialization and commodification of nature, almost 10 years after the financial, climate, energy, food crisis that we had in 2007, 2008, the same corporations that benefited, the same corporations that created this multiple and intersecting crisis ended up benefiting from the so-called solutions to the climate crisis. Melissa spoke very clearly about the fact that beyond all these companies buying carbon credits, we're being told that we're clearly in an age where we're being told that small individual actions are going to save us from the climate crisis. But we know that the problems of the climate crisis are systemic and structural, and we can only move to a world where we have climate justice through changing the system, changing the very structures that created these problems. And so going back to the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth, it's very clear that violations, so for example, violations have been committed on the earth in its entirety. So under Article 2 on inherent rights of Mother Earth, every single right has been every single right has been violated, and I will name just a few. Mother Earth and all beings of which she is composed have the following inherent rights. The right to life and to exist has been violated. The right to be respected has been violated. The right to regenerate its biocapacity and to continue its vital cycles and processes free from human disruptions has been violated. And in addition to that, Article 3 on the obligations of human beings to Mother Earth, specifically under F, respect, protect, conserve where necessary, restore the integrity of the vital ecological cycles, processes and balances of Mother Earth. It's very clear that we have failed in our obligations to Mother Earth. And also guaranteeing that the damages caused by human violations of the inherent rights recognized in this declaration are rectified, and those that are responsible are held to account for restoring the integrity and the health of Mother Earth. We've also failed severely in this obligation. And in conclusion, I think it's important. It was important to listen to also the resistance by communities communities in Ecuador, communities in Nigeria, and this is basically what I think it's important to remedy the violations that we have. We need to continue reimagining a different world. We need to reclaim the concept of climate justice from the UNFCCC process and from corporations. We need to transform gender relations, challenging patriarchy, misogyny, and sexism within these movements. And we also need to resist the privatization of the commons. Forests are commons. The poorest people across the world depend on intact ecosystems for their survival. Beyond the physical destruction of these ecosystems, this has come out from all the presentations today. This is economic sabotage for so many communities across the world who are already economically marginalized and belong to what we call the so-called 99%. We need to challenge techno fixes, of course, and we need to challenge extractivist economic policies, and we need to recover the principles of justice, putting people and planet first before profits, and finally linking the gendered, economic, and environmental justice struggles that people on the front lines of the climate crisis are experiences. And again, tree plantations are not forests, no to commodification of and privatization of our forests. Thank you.
Good evening. We've heard and listened to a lot of stories today. It was very impressive, and I thank you, everybody, that you dealt with your cases and that you were open-minded to give it to this place into our hearts. Thank you. I will present the case of lignite mining in the Hambacher forest. The old forest, Hambacher forest, in the west of the city of Cologne, which is not very far away, existed over 12,000 years. Originally 60 square kilometers, only about 7 kilometers are left. The other area of the forest was destroyed, digged up by giant machines. And this goes on 24 hours a day, opening a hole of over 43 meters in depth, becoming the largest hole of Europe I think that's quite impressive. Soon the destruction of the old forest might be completed. The existence of 2 other holes in the area shows that huge open cast mining is the economic concept of the company backed by the government. As judge to this case, I heard many well-founded arguments that this ancient forest became the classical commodity for the company RWE, that the right of existence of the nature within the forest has been denied. How does this case violate the rights of nature? I have to make this point because in Germany we are struggling with this concept. It's not quite well known, so if you introduce this in Germany you have to be more precise and to explain it, so I will do this. The inherent rights of nature where life is reproduced and exists, it is not given to this area, especially not to the Hambacher forest. For this international tribunal, ecosystems and natural communities are not merely property that can be owned, but are entities that have an independent right to flourish, that they must be respected and have the right to regenerate its biocapacity. And we have heard these rights have been denied to the Hambacher forest, which became under destruction since the 70s. 40,000 people, their houses and villages were relocated. So, as we already heard, many violations of the Article 2 of the Universal Declaration of Rights of Mother Earth are existing. Lignite mining at the Hambacher forest is ruining the whole water system of the area, and many future generations, maybe eternal, will have to pay big money for groundwater pumping up the for groundwater pumping, and this is really a disaster which the company will not pay it off, and this will have the longest lasting impact we know for the area to come. Lignite mining is the opposite of defending clean air. I think that's quite clear. The excavators eject radioactive material, coarse and fine dust particles, and traces uranium, and which all goes up in the air. It was claimed by the experts that 90 million tons of CO2 emissions comes out by the burning of brown coal. And so we don't only have the holes, we also have the effect of the burning of the coal, which is threatening the earth. The damage through the CO2 emissions is tremendous. The danger to the world, to the atmosphere, is responsible to the climate catastrophe, and it's showing already its impact. So we are dealing right now with a disaster showing up in the area, being close to the conference, knowing that it changes our world for 100 and maybe for thousands of years. The tribunal recognizes that now over 31 people and 31 tree houses with people in the Hambacher forest are made to show solidarity with the forest and its system. I think that has to be honored. And it means people are defending nature against its complete destruction. And we are grateful. What should be done? We have heard that the mining law still breaks every other law in Germany. So I see this has to be changed. And we really have to deal with it on the national level, and it's really a tremendous amount of work because we are stepping only further in very, very tiny steps. But as I said, this has to be changed. The concept of the right of nature has to be integrated into the legal system of Germany. Of course, that's a very long way to go. The Hambacher forest should not be sacrificed for the profits of the company RWE. And I think that it's very important to say this in this moment.
what's necessary, and it was said by the experts and by the people who showed up, it's change of the system. The disrespect for nature must be stopped, and this is my conclusion.
Bueno, gracias a todos. Voy a hablar en español y gracias sobre todo por la paciencia de estar aquí a esa hora y sobre todo por la paciencia que vais a tener a escuchar la última intervención que es la mía. Y antes que todo quiero expresar un agradecimiento a los organizadores de este tribunal internacional sobre los derechos de la naturaleza, a todos los testigos por el coraje y sobre todo por la gran experiencia de defensa de los derechos de la naturaleza que han compartido con nosotros, y a los expertos que nos han ilustrado y nos han hecho entender mejor los casos que nos estaban presentando. Y por supuesto también a los jueces que integran este panel. Yo, como han dicho en el principio, estoy aquí en representancia del Tribunal Permanente de los Pueblos, que es otro tribunal internacional de opinión, y por supuesto mi presencia no quiere ser solo simbólica. Mi presencia corresponde al propósito bien específico de crear vínculos entre experiencias de resistencia para la defensa de los derechos humanos y para la defensa de los derechos de los pueblos y de los derechos de la naturaleza. Ya ha sido destacado uno de los artículos de la Declaración Universal de los Derechos de la Madre Tierra, pero quiero destacarlo otra vez porque es muy importante. La declaración subraya que para garantizar los derechos humanos es necesario reconocer y defender los derechos de la Madre Tierra. Eso es muy importante porque retoma uno de los artículos de la Declaración Universal de los Derechos de los Pueblos, que es conocida como la Carta de Argel, que fue elaborada en el 1976 y que fue, digamos, la carta que fundó el Tribunal Permanente de los Pueblos. Y en esta carta, ya en 1976, se reconocía el vínculo entre los pueblos y el medio ambiente, y se reconocía el derecho a la protección, a la conservación del medio ambiente y a la necesidad de coordinar el desarrollo económico con la solidaridad de los pueblos en el mundo. Eso me parece muy lindo a ponerlo en la mesa y en nuestras consideraciones. El Tribunal Permanente ha desarrollado muchas audiencias y creo que ha desarrollado a través de 40 sesiones sobre empresas transnacionales, sobre los impactos del capitalismo financiero y sobre los impactos de las normas internacionales que favorecen a las empresas, es decir, todos los acuerdos y tratados que conocéis. Ha desarrollado una doctrina que se puede adoptar y que pongo a disposición para los jueces y para la gente que está aquí presente. Y es una doctrina cuyos elementos pueden ser resumidos en 2 puntos. La existencia, por supuesto y lamentablemente, de múltiples violaciones de los derechos humanos y de los pueblos y de los derechos de la naturaleza, y la existencia de un régimen normativo que legaliza lo ilegal y la impunidad y que ha condenado los derechos humanos, los derechos de los pueblos y los derechos de la naturaleza a una condición de exilio y de irrelevancia ante las necesidades del sistema económico dominante. En este tribunal hemos escuchado casos de climate change, de la explotación ciega de los recursos de la naturaleza, como son los casos de las minas, del fracking, de los oleoductos y etc. Todas estas actividades han conllevado el desplazamiento, el desarraigo de las comunidades locales, han puesto en peligro el agua, la seguridad alimentaria, la biodiversidad de regiones enteras y han violado territorios sagrados de los pueblos indígenas. Además de esto, ha sido demostrado una fuerte y creciente persecución de los defensores y de las defensoras de las tierras, que es un fenómeno alarmante y global, que ha sido destacado también en el informe del 2017 del relator especial de Naciones Unidas sobre defensores, Michel Forst, que además hemos encontrado en Roma y con el cual hemos tenido un amplio debate antes de la publicación de este informe. En este informe se afirma, y me parece muy importante destacarlo, que el trabajo de los defensores y de las defensoras en el contexto de la relación entre empresas y derechos humanos es crucial para la protección de la tierra y del medio ambiente. Y destaca también en este informe el coraje de aquellas personas y particularmente de las comunidades indígenas a los cuales les están negando sus derechos fundamentales para oponerse a los intereses de los más poderosos. Algunos datos para entender de qué estamos hablando. Tanto el informe del relator especial como el informe de Global Witnesses ha destacado el incremento del número de los abusos y de los asesinatos de los defensores en 2016. Han sido asesinados en este año 200 defensores de la Madre Tierra en 24 países. En el 2015 los países en que ocurrían estas violaciones y los asesinatos eran solo 16. Y el número, la cifra que se ha alcanzado en este año del 2017 casi va a superar la cifra del 2016. En los casos presentados hoy sobre defensores y defensoras de la tierra, que son el de Standing Rock, United States, de Short People en Rusia y de Sami People en Suecia, se evidencian básicamente la relación muy fuerte y estrecha y casi simbiótica entre las comunidades indígenas y la naturaleza. Es cuando los representantes de los Sami People nos decían: todos los ríos tienen un pueblo. Nos han destacado también la función esencial en la defensa y de los pueblos de parte de los defensores, en la defensa y en la transmisión de la memoria de los ciclos vitales, que hay que proteger. Esta memoria no es la que corresponde a los paisajes lunares ni a saberes tecnicísticos que son impuestos por la cultura dominante. Y también nos demuestran que para cumplir el plan sistemático de robo y de explotación de los recursos de la naturaleza, a los cuales corresponden las violaciones de los derechos, así como han sido establecidos en la Declaración de Cochabamba, a este plan sistemático de robo y de explotación corresponde un ataque a las comunidades indígenas en cuanto protectoras y defensoras. Y este ataque es funcional e intencional de parte de los estados y de las empresas, no es casual. Por esto hay un modus operandi bien consolidado. En primer lugar, se destruye la identidad de los pueblos a través de leyes discriminatorias que fragmentan las comunidades, que niegan la cultura y la identidad colectiva. Y como consecuencia se niega a esas comunidades el derecho que ellos tienen a proteger la madre tierra. Es una forma de exclusión, de discriminación y de negación que pasa también por un utilizo muy perverso de la ley. Perverso, no sé si se dice así. Como se ha visto particularmente en los casos del Sami People y en el caso de Short People. Como se han demostrado en todos los demás casos que se han presentado toda esta mañana, y en particular el de Standing Rock, existe un patrón generalizado de violaciones de los derechos de los defensores y de las defensoras que se manifiestan básicamente a través de amenazas, intimidaciones, ataques violentos, hostigamientos, encarcelamientos arbitrarios, obstáculos para la libre circulación y, por supuesto, asesinatos. Es particularmente relevante, creo, todas las tentativas de criminalización y de propaganda en contra de los defensores. Se trata de lo que hacen los medios de comunicación y las autoridades y también las empresas, es tratar de construir una identidad negativa y de justificar de esta manera la violencia que se cumple y la violencia que se va a cumplir. Entonces la violencia futura y básicamente la impunidad También hace parte de este patrón generalizado la violación del derecho al acceso a la información y el derecho a la consulta previa y el derecho a la participación. Todos estos son crímenes graves que son cometidos de manera generalizada y sistemáticas por parte de las empresas y de los estados que hay que perseguir. Los defensores de la Madre Tierra no quieren estar en silencio, quieren hablar ante la imposición de un modelo de desarrollo que pone la naturaleza y todos los seres humanos a su servicio. Para proteger la Madre Tierra se necesita proteger a sus defensores. Y para hacer esto hay que, en primer lugar, reconocer el rol de los defensores, en cuanto al rol imprescindible de los defensores en cuanto defensores de la Madre Tierra. En segundo lugar, hay que reconocer los derechos de los defensores, es decir, básicamente, el derecho a la vida y a la defensa de la tierra, a través de medidas que ellos consideran necesarias, que pueden ser la de la protesta y de la resistencia. Y, en tercer lugar, hay que reconocer el derecho a la información y la participación y el derecho a la consulta. Estas son obligaciones relevantes del Estado y de indicadores y garantías del funcionamiento de las democracias. Esta es una lucha global en contra de poderes que matan la tierra y la humanidad. El rol de los tribunales de opiniones es esencialmente el de mantener alta el alerta, el de crear conciencia, como se destacaba esta mañana, y sobre todo de crear plataformas integradas de lucha contra el poder de las transnacionales y la complicidad de los estados y de las instituciones internacionales. Es interés de todos porque es interés también de las generaciones futuras. Y ante la ilegalidad, que es la única regla, lo decía la representante del caso de Standing Rock, Candy, cuando decía todo es ilegal, decía también que somos nosotros que tenemos que producir evidencias. Y esta tarea es la de defender específicamente a los que nos ayudan a producir evidencias y a proteger la Madre Tierra. Gracias.
Thank you. I'll try and be brief. So I am dealing with the case of the Almeria Aguas matter. And before I start, I just wanted to say one thing. One of the things we are trying to do here with the tribunal is to show that there is a higher law than the laws that are made by people. And that when I talk about something being lawful or not lawful, I'm referring to the laws of nature, the laws of the natural system that we are part of, as reflected in the Universal Declaration. And I'm not talking about lawful in relation to the current laws. So it's very clear from the evidence that has been presented in connection with Almeria, which I'm not going to go through because you remember it, that the excessive abstractions of water from the aquifer violate the declaration in many ways. For example, it violates the aquifer's right to exist, to maintain its integrity, to regulate itself, to continue its vital cycles and processes, and to play its unique role within the ecological community. It also violates the rights of ecological communities that depend on the water to exist, to life as a source of, and to water as a source of life, and to integral health. But the most important question is what is to be done and who is responsible for doing that. The first priority must be to ensure that the health, integrity and functioning of the aquifer is preserved. And we'll be looking at one particular aquifer, but the same applies to all the aquifers in that region. In practical terms, this means that no human being or human institution or corporation has the right to take water from the aquifers at a rate that exceeds the rate at which the aquifer is able to replenish or recharge itself. To do otherwise is to mine the water and to destroy a fountain of life, and that is the road to destruction and ruin. So in this case, it is clear that the most immediate action that must be taken is to dramatically reduce or stop the pumping of water from the aquifer, to enable it to restore itself to health. Now, the effects of allowing large-scale, intensive olive farms to abstract enormous volumes of water from the aquifer are not only violations of the rights of Mother Earth, they are also violations of human rights. The effect is to deprive many people who have an intimate and long-standing relationship with this land of a means of sustaining themselves. Many have been and are being driven from their lands and homes as effectively as if they had been dispossessed of their lands by a conquering army. In this case, the state has permitted these violations and is consequently complicit in them. The people of Spain, like people everywhere, have established a system of government which is required to promote the common good of at least all its human citizens. In order to do so, it must use its powers to protect the ecological cycles and processes that sustain all life and without which humans will not flourish. It is clear to us that the Spanish state has failed to fulfill its duties. Consequently, this tribunal finds that all responsible public authorities at Almería must immediately use their legislative, administrative and enforcement powers to stop the pumping of the water from the aquifers and to ensure that other appropriate measures are taken to restore the aquifer and the water systems to health. The second responsibility of state officials and institutions is to ensure that water that flows from the aquifers is allocated among human beings in a way that is equitable and reflects the understanding that not all uses of water are equal. The use of water for humans and other animals to drink must always take precedence over the use of water for large-scale irrigation projects, particularly when those projects result in the destruction of indigenous communities of plants and animals. It is clear in this case that the state has allowed a wholly inappropriate and equitable allocation of water use rights among human beings. So also the corporations and persons directly involved in abstracting the water for the new olive orchards must immediately cease the pumping. Continuing with this activity is a serious and ongoing violation of the declaration and is consequently unlawful in the most fundamental sense. Their actions are particularly reprehensible in that they are continuing with full knowledge of the progressive destruction that they are causing. The tribunal calls upon all persons and institutions that facilitate the continuation of these unlawful and destructive activities, for example, those that finance them or purchase the crops produced from the orchards, to desist from doing so, to stop what they're doing in order to avoid being complicit in these violations. The tribunal invites all people who seek to respect the rights of Mother Earth and to fulfill their duty to live in harmony with Mother Earth to take appropriate and proportional action to stop this ongoing violation and to ensure that those responsible are held accountable for restoring the integrity and health of Mother Earth. In conclusion, as the President of the Tribunal has reminded us, many indigenous people who have maintained intimate and respectful relationships with other members of the Earth community for thousands of years do not regard water as a natural resource to be bought and sold. From this perspective, water is imbued with the intelligence of the Creator, has its own consciousness, has a spiritual dimension, and is alive. The profound relationship between humans and water is understood by all. This tribunal is empowered to consider not only scientific, hydrological, and ecological knowledge, but also indigenous wisdom. In this case, both systems of knowing point to the same conclusion. In order to ensure that the community of life in the Almería region may continue to benefit from the life-giving flows from the aquifer, human society must respect water as life, and whatever measures are necessary to protect this extraordinary source of water must be taken.
I promised Natty I would keep my summation to only 1 hour. So. Well, it's been a long day. I just want to keep my words short. I'm going to give my summation and my conclusion tomorrow after I hear all the cases. I just want to once again compliment all the people who have come here from impacted communities, the impacted people. We are all impacted, not one above the other. The people that came touched my heart. The woman from Russia, I told her when I talked to her upstairs, I come from the same environment, the same experiences on my mother's side in Arizona on the Navajo reservation. I grew up in a place called Coal Mine Mesa, and I grew up with machinery. You hear the machines day in, day out in an area that is supposed to be quiet. In fact, it is pretty pristine, except for this area. It's like a fenced area where the corporations have come in with machines for coal mining. And I told her that when they leave, they say it's clean. When they leave, they only cover the earth with about that much soil. And they truck in the soil and they plant a grass, a vegetation that is not native to the area. And it grows. And they take photographs and pictures. And they make films, their own corporation film. And they make it look like they have restored Mother Earth. But if you dig down into that ground, it's dead. It doesn't, nothing grows. So I come from that kind of environment from my mom. It's something that you never forget. So I wanted to compliment those impacted peoples. And for those of you that made those selections, you did a good job. I wanted to compliment on this first day the experts who I detected some were nervous. It takes a lot of bravery to put your notes together and to speak in front of people as well before the distinguished judges. Those of us come from communities, sometimes we get intimidated by lawyers, attorneys. Either they are our saviors and protectors to interpret law that is not ours, whether you're indigenous or not indigenous. So sometimes our people are intimidated by some of those that understand the law and the law of colonial systems. But some of the judges are not lawyers, but they're familiar and experienced with interpretation of what you are saying as community. And so I wanted to compliment these distinguished judges to be able to listen and to be able to translate into these new concepts that we are talking about. Concepts of a new paradigm, a legal paradigm that is needed. And it is very challenging for those of you that have really done critical thinking on what is this new paradigm and how do we implement it so that society, so that governance structures, so that there's penalties and compliance on this new set of laws that recognize what we call earth law, earth jurisprudence, different terminology. And I feel that we are all on the right path. I will talk more about that possible future tomorrow. And also, I'd like to compliment all those that have made this possible today. I was looking around, and it takes a lot to do what is being done here. Volunteers, the team here from Germany, everyone that made this possible. It's the first day. I believe that we have done good in what we've set out as goals as a planning committee. And the secretariat, she's done, it's really good to have someone that we can turn to, someone that sends out the emails to us to see, remind us of what our task does and to keep on schedule. But also the translators, I wanted to say thank you to the translators. It's working with computers, I'm going blind. But most especially, I think, is that we started out in a very respectful and appropriate way. We look to those indigenous peoples that are closest to you, closest to us here, and the Sami who made their way here and shared their song, shared their spirit. They come with the love and compassion of their people, but they also shared something dear to them. How do we make that possible? That people share who they are, and the woman from Russia nearby, her as well, but the Sariyaku who took a long journey to be here. I have been lucky and fortunate to be in their homeland, taking the river in the little dugout canoe, but with the man with the little motor back here and a man in the front with the pole to make sure we don't get stopped by logs and trees in the river. They know the river. This is part of that, knowing your environment, your land and your water where you're from. So we started out with that blessing and sharing of the spirit of who we all are. And that's what this movement is about, coming back to our Mother Earth and understanding what that teachings of that umbilical cord that we all have, that connection to the earth, that little hole or that outie. You got an outie or you got an innie, that little belly button. But that's our connection. That's how we are connected, you know, when we talk about Mother Earth. If you don't have one of these, I welcome you from the other Star Nation people. If you are here and you don't have one of these, I thank you for being here. That's indigenous humor. So I just want to say thank you and look forward to tomorrow. We're going to start, I believe, at 8:30 sharp. She will make sure, so be here. We have more people coming tomorrow that are going to be sharing their stories, experts, and impacted people. So get some rest to our distinguished judges. Prepare as you must, and thank you.